We're going to start out, take a quick look back at a story we've covered pretty much every week since it happened. We first covered it on August 30th. Of course, this took place on August 29th, and that was the drone strike in Kabul, Afghanistan, that killed a family of 10, and 7 of whom were children, many of whom were small children. And we went through last week and explained to you, exactly how the strike went down. So we're not going to go back through it in such detail again. But the reason I wanted to take a quick look back at the story is we got some new input last week. We got some honesty finally from the U.S. military, which apparently is not the most common thing in the world. And as you know, the strike killed this gentleman, Zamari Ahmadi, who was driving his car, a lot of the children in his and his brother's family. And, of course, Mr. Ahmadi was a 43-year-old aid worker for a United States NGO that was working over in Afghanistan called Nutrition and Education International. And that NGO was based out of California. And after the strike happened on the 29th of August, General Milley, the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, gave a press conference where he talked about the strike being righteous and that we had very good intelligence that there was an ISIS person in the car, an ISIS facilitator, he called it. And we played that clip for you last week, but I want you to remember this in case you missed it. I want you to hear it again. I've cut it down just a little bit to get to just the essentials, but I want you to hear General Milley, and I want you to ask yourself what would lead him to give a press conference like this, and particularly as we follow it up with the truth finally coming out.
At the time, and I think this is still valid, we had very good intelligence that ISIS-K was preparing a specific type vehicle at a specific type location. We monitored that through various means, and all of the engagement criteria were being met. We went through the same level of rigor that we've done for years, and we took a strike. So that we did. Secondly, is we know that there were secondary explosions.
We know that.
Because there were secondary explosions, there's a reasonable conclusion to be made that there was explosives in that vehicle. The third thing is we know from a variety of other means that at least one of those people that were killed was a ISIS facilitator.
We know that.
But at this point, we think that the procedures were correctly followed, and it was a righteous strike.
It was a righteous strike. He says, we know that. We know these things. But the truth is, we didn't know these things because now it's come out that those things aren't true. So we didn't know them, obviously. If we believe them, then what we believed was not true. And one wonders, how did we get to that point? Now, we had Senator Rand Paul questioning Secretary of State Anthony Blinken on this very issue, and I thought it was so poignant because this is actually after the New York Times report, an extensive report came out, and of course, these folks in Washington and other places in the liberal elites, they don't believe it unless it's written in the New York Times or the Washington Post. Well, now here it is written in the New York Times that, this just killed a family. Nobody was related to ISIS. The gentleman had just filled up some water bottles while he was at work because his neighborhood had a water shortage. But even still, Secretary of State could not admit the truth of this matter. This was about a week ago when Senator Rand Paul was questioning him, and listen to this exchange.
The guy the Biden administration droned, was he an aid worker or an ISIS-K operative?
The administration is, of course, reviewing that strike, and I'm sure that a full assessment will be forthcoming.
So you don't know if it was an aid worker or an ISIS-K operative?
I can't speak to that, and I can't speak to that in this setting in any event.
So you don't know or won't tell us?
I don't know because we're reviewing it.
Well, see, you'd think you'd kind of know before you off somebody with a Predator drone, whether he's an aid worker or he's an ISIS-K.
And that makes some sense. You'd think we'd want to know who we're killing, right? Or unless these people just don't matter.
Do we know who's asking those questions? I'm sorry, did you say that?
That was Senator Rand Paul.
Oh, that was Senator Rand Paul.
Yeah, that was Rand Paul questioning Anthony Blinken up on Capitol Hill. And, of course, so it starts out that we know it was ISIS-K. We know there were secondary explosions. This was a righteous strike. That's the start out. And then finally, a lot of people reported it before the New York Times, by the way, but then finally the New York Times comes out and says, no, basically none of that's true. This was a family. It was a working gentleman who worked for, by the way, a U.S. aid organization that was over there trying to help people in Afghanistan. And he was filling up water bottles at work, And so all that comes out. Now Anthony Blinken says, well, we don't know. There's still an investigation. I mean, these people absolutely will not give up the con, right? They will never give up the con until they absolutely have to. And now what's happened, this is the final piece of the story, but apparently this is the final word. And I just want to point out to you folks, remember that the truth is only true once it becomes the government or the military's official story, right? You can only believe it when they tell you it's true. No independent reports, no independent thought will be tolerated. So don't think for yourself. You can't trust anything until they tell you. But now, finally, let's hear what CENTCOM Commander General Kenneth McKenzie has to say about this. And here comes the truth, finally, 3 weeks later.
I am now convinced that as many as 10 civilians, including up to 7 children, were tragically killed in that strike. Moreover, we now assess that it is unlikely that the vehicle and those who died were associated with ISIS-K or were a direct threat to U.S. forces. I offer my profound condolences to the family and friends of those who were killed. This strike was taken in the earnest belief that it would prevent an imminent threat to our forces and the evacuees at the airport. But it was a mistake, and I offer my sincere apology. As the combatant commander, I am fully responsible for this strike and this tragic outcome.
So we have 10 innocent civilians dead, 7 of whom are children, and we've got the CENTCOM commander offering his profound condolences and sincere apology. And he says he's fully responsible for the strike and its outcome. Well, what exactly does that mean? I mean, what has happened to General McKenzie? Has he had to resign? Has he been demoted? Did he send flowers to the funeral? Did he skip dinner one night in solidarity with his family of 10 that was murdered? I mean, what has he done? What responsibility, other than paying lip service to it, which is all these people seem to do, what exactly has he done to take responsibility? And I say he's done absolutely nothing. And I want to ask the question, what does it mean in the American military today to take full responsibility? Who has taken full responsibility for the absolute debacle that was the Afghanistan withdrawal? Nobody has. Nobody's been forced to resign. Nobody's been demoted. Nobody's been brought up on charges under the Uniform Code of Military Justice. Nothing has happened. Are there any real consequences? It doesn't appear that there are. And are these any questions that you've heard the media asking? Has anybody in the mainstream media been asking these questions about who's going to be held responsible for this absolute debacle? And if they haven't, why haven't they? Because we've got a controlled media in this country that only tells you things that the government approves of. They only toe the line. They only tell you the approved sources from the government, from the military, and that's all the news that you get. And folks, that's not news, that's not opinion, that's propaganda. They're narrative engineers.
It's the press release.
It's the press release. They just repeat the press release. And the only time the truth comes out is when they're absolutely caught red-handed and they can't hang on to the con anymore. They have to give it up because they have been caught red-handed, just like General McKenzie and the military was in killing these 10 innocent civilians. Thank you for listening to the Morgan Streetman Show. We hope you enjoyed what you heard, and if you did, please click like and subscribe to help us out. And remember that we recommend that you exercise your brain at least once a week.